Hey Eric, happy fall. Thanks for joining this podcast. It's my first one, so um, appreciate you giving me the time of day. Um, Wanted to introduce you first. Today's topic will be the passion to policy, how
Mhm,
boards shape mission-driven work.
mhm.
Highlight how, so I'd like to highlight your strategic decisions at the board level impact real world programs. Um, and this is pretty much a thing that I'm doing for AAPA
Mhm.
for their podcast. And so to introduce you quickly, Eric joins us, and Eric is a seasoned cross-border management consultant and entrepreneur based in San Francisco. He has an MBA with University of Toronto, Rotman School of Management, and a background in political science and business. Um, Eric has held strategic roles at leading firms. I can't pronounce it, so I don't know if Eric you can pronounce the three big ones that
It's all
you've been
right.
part of.
It's Deloitte, Bombardier Aerospace, and Deutsche Telekom, otherwise known in the US as T-Mobile USA.
All right, great, thank you. Um, so I hear too that you're known as a super connector
Yes.
in the Bay Area tech ecosystem. You're passionate about linking people,
Hmm.
ideas, and opportunities across industries and geographies. Your work spans finance, strategy, and operations,
Yeah.
and you're deeply engaged in supporting startups and nonprofit initiatives.
Yeah.
That's quite a mouthful, and sounds like you've been around the block in this area. And
Yeah.
then you're also the AAPA co-chair
That's right.
um, with this nonprofit board.
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining.
No worries. And thank you, Joe Marie, for
Uh,
having me on.
yeah, so again, like for today's topic, I'd like to pick your brain a bit more about um, how do you take the passion that you have? You're deeply engaged in the community with the
Mhm.
startups, nonprofit initiatives, being part of AAPA. Can you talk a little bit more of what you do as a co-chair for AAPA?
Yeah. So I think, taking a further step back of why I got involved, I think it leads into our discussion point today, which is I am very passionate at a personal level in terms of executing vision, right? I always jokingly state in the corny way, I like turning vision into reality, right? So I don't know where I paraphrase that from, but that's always been my life's work. And with AAPA, I definitely see not only a need, but a strong match with my skill sets and those of the other board members of AAPA. Again, just to give a bit of history, we were started in 1999, primarily focused on mentoring and board leadership programs for the Asian American community, but we're open to all. And I think that in this day and age in particular is even more critical. So I joined the board about 3 years ago or so. And this was all before generative AI and the disruptions that we're seeing in the macroeconomic environment. But one thing is for sure, uh, the need for network and the need for community is of greater importance, not only on a societal level, but at an individual level. And I think organizations like AAPA have a duty in order to push that networking community. So one of the big things as a board chair is to make sure that not only we're executing the short term for our stakeholders and our which includes our sponsors but our community members, but also for the long term in terms of where they can achieve value with our programs. So there's a lot to unpack there, and in terms of what I do on a co-chair basis, we're a bit of a working board, so I do a bit of everything. It kind of fits my personality, so I do a bit of finance, do a bit of fundraising, and a bit of management and getting marketing and communications. So we can dive into any of those areas, and I can probably give you an interesting overview.
Yeah, that's great. And then probably take a little bit step back on AAPA.
Yeah.
What does AUPA stand for?
Yes. I didn't mention that at the beginning. That's a very good point. So it stands for Asian American Professionals Association. So as I mentioned, we were established in 1999, and we primarily offer mentorship and board leadership programs to the Asian American community, but it's open to all, right? As is our ethos. And we've been very successful. We've always consistently have thousands of alumni and several dozen participants on a yearly basis. So we're based in the greater LA region, primarily the Pasadena, California area, but our alumni span the United States and actually even into Canada. So yeah, a bit about AAPA there.
Thank you. Um, so for I'd like to dive, dive more into it sounds like you're a working board member. What
Yeah.
does that mean? And how has it been successful for shaping your mission driven work?
Yeah, so I think in this day and age, well, I'll take a step back and say a working board member, I think, is increasingly the norm, whether it's nonprofit or for profit, right? I think the old stereotype, whether you're on a nonprofit board or a for-profit board, is that you sit back, you collect your paycheck, and you bring in maybe donors if you're part of a nonprofit board, right? A working board actually gets into the day-to-day, right? So it's not only setting the strategy, but it's also diving deep. And in my current role, my full-time role at Amazon Web Services, the cloud computing provider, we very much are what we like that, right? We want individuals and managers who can think strategically, but also work tactically. So as a working board member for AAPA, I very much, think strategically. So think about the strategic plan over the next 3 to 5 years, but also worry about the day to day. That doesn't mean that, we don't employ staff or contractors for more of the administrative day-to-day lift, but we want to get involved because we feel that it allows us to make adjustments to programs and to our day-to-day initiatives quicker and faster to be responsive to our stakeholders, our sponsors, and the community. So that to me is our definition of a working board.
Okay, so Eric, how is as a working board, what are your current initiatives that you're excited for, and can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think the big three initiatives that we're working on that I'm excited about is um, one is basically upgrading and expanding our program offerings. So I'll start with that. So with the mentorship program and the board leadership program, we've been very successful over the past 26 plus years. But we realize in these changing macroeconomic conditions and societal conditions, we need to reestablish what is good and be at the forefront, right? So in the past, we didn't have to encounter generative AI. We didn't have to encounter a very turbulent macroeconomic environment with tariffs and with the changing geopolitical situation, right? So we are in the process of taking a look at our foundational modules, both for our core programs, our mentorship program and our board leadership program, and seeing what can we do better. What should we talk about, right? It's funny. I look at our board leadership program as an example, and we probably need to talk about technology a bit more, right? I think everyone used to just think, oh, you can pick up a laptop and a computer and be able to do something. Now it's about thinking through the architecture, right? Where do you want to store your data? How do you want to store your data? How do you centralize it? So that potentially you might want to use generative AI to help in your day to day, right? Whether it's grant writing or maybe outreach to members or doing analysis, right, of for your stakeholders and saying, hey, this is where we are and this is where we're going. The other part of that program initiative that I'm super excited about is launching new programs to meet community demand. So one of the ones that we're looking at is creating entrepreneur leadership pilot, right? So it still honors our foundational heritage of building leaders, but addressing the community need of being an entrepreneur, right? I think the one stat I remember, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact number, but US economy is driven by small business. Everyone talks about the larger companies, but at the end of the day, the most employees are at small businesses, not at large companies. The large companies get all the press, but the day-to-day work is small businesses. So for us, making sure that we're creating the next generation of entrepreneurs, of small business owners, or potentially even corporations is critical to us, right? And I think that's critical for that program. The second, and I kind of alluded to it before, is I would say expanding and offering more to our community. And when I say community, I'm not only talking about our sponsors, our current participants, but our alumni as well. I kind of alluded to earlier. In the age of generative AI, it's not just about content, right? Anyone can go to ChatGPT or Gemini and say, hey, tell me some of the top things for mentorship or help me with this. I think there was some Pew study that indicated that a lot of people go to um, chat bots for mentorship. So the core foundation is probably going to be everywhere and easily available. So our advantage for AAPA is that vast, broad, and deep network that we have, courtesy of our alumni, our sponsors, and our current mentees. And we have to figure out ways of how do we engage, but also we make it valuable. I've always said that networking, good networking isn't transactional. It isn't one way. It's about how do you make it bidirectional and how do you make it beneficial. So our job with AAPA is to build that community, allow that bidirectional communication and value for all our stakeholders, whether they're alumni, sponsors, or current participants. And then I think the third thing that I'm super excited about is, and I kind of alluded to at point one, is technology. So we're in the process of overhauling our technological core for the generative AI age, right? So we're rethinking how we do things to better serve our community and to be more efficient and to take advantage of new technologies like generative AI because that is the wave. That way we can serve more people, but we can also be more individualistic in terms of what people need, right? One of the big things and the big experiments that we keep constantly trying to achieve is, we've done a great job at a broad scale, right? And education has done a good job at a broad scale, but how do we customize it? How do we individualize and personalize it? And AAPA has a viewpoint on that, right? In terms of trying to get there with a combination of technology and customization. And we hope to scale that across the country and who knows, maybe across the globe as well. So those are the three big initiatives I'm super excited about.
Yeah, that sounds great because what I'm hearing that's a key point here is technology
Yeah.
and generative AI. And how do we modernize AAPA as that technology continues to grow? I was familiar with like ChatGPT
Hmm.
and Copilot. Gemini is a new one to me. So I feel like as we keep evolving, how do we keep current for
Yeah.
AAPA?
I
Um,
think that's the big thing is, especially with the generative AI space, it's constantly evolving. Gemini is Google's version of Microsoft Copilot, right?
mm,
And basically, the technology space is moving so quickly. We at APA, we need to adapt as quickly, but we also need to honor our heritage as well. I'm not trying to throw, and nor is the board trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we are trying to scale it more and leverage the technology, right? We're building on great founders like Francis Chung and Mei Chen and Phil Chen, who founded AEPA and drove it to the success it is. And we want to honor that by scaling their programs further, but also making sure it is responsive to the needs of the community, right? And the community needs a lot right now. The traditional pathways to career success, they're different than they were when AAPA was established in 1999. And we need to keep up with that. And a lot of that change is driven by technology. So we need to be able to honor some of the heritage that we have, honor the cultural aspects as well, right? The human aspects, let me call it. And I think that's where our strength lies. But leverage technology so that the human aspect is strengthened and not atrophied over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And no pun intended here, but you don't want to be the next blockbuster where
Well, we don't, but
it
Blockbuster is still memorable, right? We're still talking about it, even though they
is,
went out of
it is
business a while back.
for sure. And then I'm glad to hear that you are using how do you supplement the AI aspect, the technology, but still keep maintain the human aspect. I was reading an article about how kids nowadays, teens,
Yeah,
they're they're like just focused on it sounds like no longer communicating to friends, but communicating to Copilot. Like whatever issues that they're encountering, it's all through Copilot. And I could see the desire and leverage on that, but I feel like the human aspect that AAPA brings it can be very advantageous because you miss the tone for it.
exactly. And you hit the nail on the head, right? I read a similar article, right? That it's not only teenagers, but a lot of people, it's like they prefer their AI companions because it's like, oh, they don't push back and all that. And in real life, a lot of people do. And I think people, unfortunately, who are, I don't want to say AI addicted, but let's say are maybe over leveraging AI, are gotten too used to it's like their viewpoint is their right or world viewpoint, right? Rightly or wrongly. And I think one of our missions at AAPA is to balance that, right? I've been thinking about this issue a lot personally, but also as part of AAPA. Is like we need to bring it back to balance. The technology is useful, right? But we can't forget the human aspect. In some respects, generative AI should be used to simplify some of the administrative burden that we do. Because let's be honest, even as entrepreneurs or whether we're in corporate, we probably deal with a lot of paperwork that we're like, wait, this is just ticking the box. It's not even worth my time. It's not actually creating value for me, for the company, or for the world. So if we can automate that, that's great, right? That's ultimately the purpose of technology so that you can do um, what you're interested in and empower the individual. Now, there's a lot of debate about that, and I won't get into that right now. That's a different podcast, right? But to your point, that needs to be balanced with the human aspect. And the human aspect, I think, is getting people comfortable with that messiness, right? Of that, oh,
Yeah.
you may have the same personalities, the same viewpoint, but you may differ and you may still argue, right? And you may not be comfortable with that with AI, right? And then the second point is, in some respects, this is a slight knock against technology is that what happens when a potential employee, an employer, their first entrance is the AI bots. Like a potential employee has an AI bot, a future employer has an AI bot. They're trying to figure out maybe that human networking or community aspects can be critical, right? It's like, oh, I know you because I know I've worked with you in the past. I'm at a different company now, but I'm going to put you into consideration for a certain role, right? Or you hear about that role before it gets put out onto LinkedIn, right? And I think you're kind of seeing that right now where I've been told a stat where if you don't apply to a LinkedIn job within the first 24 hours, you're probably too late, right? Because either an
Mm,
AI bot has gone there or just because of the way the economy is, several dozen, if not hundreds of people have already applied, right?
yeah.
And
True.
and this is where I think it's changing the mindset, and this is where AAPA comes in of like, yes, technology is not the end all and be all, but it can be your friend in certain instances. But you also have to remember it's the human aspect that's going to make or break you in terms of the career and personally as well. I don't mean make or break, but differentiate. I think is the best word to
Yeah.
use, right? And that's going to be critical. So it's like, how do you balance the two? How do you leverage the AI, but also maintain the human aspect? Like go out and network and meet new people and and learn to discuss and have different viewpoints and in a cordial and civil manner. And I think the programs that we do for mentorship and board leadership are very representative of that, right? Because we do a lot of practical, let's say, knowledge training, but there's a lot of practical training as well, right? I was on a panel for the last mentorship program for this year in 2025, and they did the STAR model for interviewing, right? Situation, task,
Mhm.
action, result. And that's that's helping with communications. That's helping people think, oh, how do I translate this into 30 seconds to someone who doesn't know me, right? Or has a different context or different understanding of what I'm saying. So you might need to get rid of the acronyms, or you might need to add in more data if they're more data driven, or tell more of a story if they're qualitative. So I think that's where AAPA values lie, but it's also about starting to think, how do you bring in the technology? Not necessarily as a crutch, but to aid in what you already have as naturally as a human being.
That's great to hear. As you're talking, a lot of things. One thing that keeps popping up in my head is like the Bruce Lee boards don't hit back. You can use the boards as much as you can, right?
Hmm.
To ensure that your technique is there
Yeah,
and it's great, but you really can't truly um, exercise that muscle until you got something that's fluid, dynamic, which I think the human aspect brings,
yeah,
to be able to practice and engage. Okay, hey, it didn't go as well as the prompt as my AI companion shared. And so that's good that you guys are coupling in APA the support, the AI companionship, but it's also there is a human aspect that needs to be brought in. And from that perspective, um, it sounds like you had a bunch of programs that you had, but now you're transitioning into this new modern age. How, as a board, how do boards decide which programs to prioritize and or sunset, and how do those decisions ripple through the staff and the community?
yeah. So I think it's several things, right? Our board is just like any board, whether it's public or private. We are ultimately responsible to the stakeholders, and I'm deliberately using the stakeholders as an example. I think a lot of people may have heard, "Hey, boards are usually beholden to the shareholders." Well, there is a model in business, and this is very applicable for nonprofits, that's to stakeholders. So, in the case of AAPA, we do a combination of things. We ask our stakeholders and say, "Hey, what are you interested in on a regular basis?" So whether they're sponsors, alumni, current participants, future participants, etc. But we also look at future trends. So this is where it's like we're doing and leveraging some of our resources, not only with in the community anecdotally, but also from research reports, futurists, right? Of like where the next 3 to 5 years may become. And that allows us to gather more data and debate. Okay, we foresee these things happening in the next 3 to 5 years. The community's asking for X, Y, and Z. What should we be doing, right, with our programs? So just like some people may be familiar with the buy, partner, or build model in business, right? If like whether it's a new product or service, we'll take a look at our programs and say, should we continue, modify, or stop, for instance, or do something, a fourth option, maybe merge, right? That might be on the table. So we look at that, we quantify it, we debate, and this is where the judgment call comes into play, right? Because for all the quantitative data that we bring in, it's going to be a qualitative call based on our very experienced, diverse board members, right? Because they come from different backgrounds, different contexts. And then hopefully we come to a consensus that leads to the decision, whether one of those four that I've outlined, right? We maybe continue, we merge, we modify, we stop, who knows, right? Um, Ultimately, when we make that decision, we have to communicate out that to the community, right? In terms of what we're thinking. It's like, hey, we're thinking that we're going to upgrade these programs and this is what we're going to do. I think the big thing for any board, especially if you're doing a dramatic change of core programs, is transparency and clear communications, right? And also accountability, right? Because um,
Right.
if you don't have that, you're not going to earn the trust and people won't follow you on the journey. So this is where, constant transparent communications is critical, whether it's an email blast updating people on what's going on, or it's one-on-one conversations, or just being available, right? In terms of answering what questions that they may have and all that. I think that's critical in this day and age where a vacuum of information can lead to disinformation or misinformation, and that can be detrimental to any organization undergoing whatever type of transformation they're undertaking.
That's so true. Transparency, I think, is a key to get people along the journey and to get buy off early on. Um, have you ever implemented a program that came from the community but didn't land quite right upon initiation? And do you iterate or do you sunset that? Like, have you experienced something uh
I
something
would
like that?
I wouldn't say we've had to sunset anything, but I think one of the things that we as a board have recognized at AAPA is that we're a little behind the eight ball, not too much in terms of adapting our programs towards generative AI, right? And as I'm sure you've seen in our communications, we've been very upfront in terms of saying, hey, we're in the process of upgrading our foundational core modules for our mentorship and board leadership program. And we've been very transparent with our sponsors in terms of thinking through what are the next steps. Are we still thinking through it? What are potential modules? Looking at different partners, etc. Um, I always look at most decisions as I'm going to use sorry, it's my company influence at play, but an Amazonian term called two-way door. Like, even if we were to launch a new program, we can always make changes, right? It's a learning experience. Nothing prevents us from modifying it mid-flight or afterwards, after we get feedback from the community, right? And this is one thing that I think everyone sometimes gets scared of is that, oh, if we make a change, we're going to lose trust or we're not able to reverse. Well, no, if you
Right.
have clear, transparent communications, you provide logical justification why you're making a modification, it's okay. You can make modifications to build a stronger program. You can recover. It's when you don't have that consistent communications and you're upfront, it's like we're modifying X, Y, and Z, then you run into trouble, right? Growth
Right.
is about change, and that is a critical component.
100% agree. I know we're coming at time here. So, last question for you, and something to leave for your listeners. But what advice would you give to someone joining a board who wants to make a meaningful impact without overstepping?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. As you know, 3 years is a long time, but I think one thing is believe in yourself. Believe in your ability to, your expertise and your abilities, because that's why you got selected to go on the board, right? So always remember that. I think the second is have an open mind and open and listen, right? Listen for clues, listen for things that you think may need to be brought to the board attention, right? And also try and understand their perspective, right? Because your context, while valuable, you need to understand their context and find the middle ground, right? So this is where listening is critical. So it's not that you want to overstep, it's that you may have to understand their context, but then bring it into your context as you make that change. So it's about communicating, but also listening. Those are the two skills that will prevent you from overstepping and making sure that you've um, aligned to the right um, the right vision. Let's put it that way, right? In a collaborative manner.
Awesome, great. So that's it. That's all I had for you today. And thank you again for your time. Um, and